Now, having said that the purpose, the dream, the vision is perhaps the most important point, but that dream, that purpose has to be converted into a reality. Otherwise it is worth nothing. So what are the behaviors that in tomorrow's world, in the brave new world, in the new normal, what are the behaviors that tomorrow's leader should exhibit? Let me talk about that now. So the first one I want to talk about is the ability to use the whole mind. You know that we have the left brain and the right brain. The left brain is the brain of logic, of rationality, of reason. It is the brain that has served mankind extremely well till now. It has brought us from the Stone Age, through the Iron Age, through the Industrial Age. We came into the Information Age. But now we are moving beyond the Information Age into what could be called the Conceptual Age. And in this Conceptual Age, it is not good enough to just use the left brain. You have to use the left brain, but you have to combine the left brain with the right brain, which is the brain of intuition, of creativity, of connection, of empathy, of connecting the dots to see the big picture. It is only those leaders who have the ability to combine the left brain with the right brain and use the whole new mind in any situation who will hold the keys to the kingdom to come in the brave new world. We need people, we need leaders who are multipliers. Multipliers of what? Of energy, of passion, of engagement, of a sense of ownership. This means that the leader must not be one who wants to only command and control. When you command and control, you tend to diminish ownership, you tend to diminish engagement, you tend to subdue the passion of people to contribute. Such people are called diminishers. But we want multipliers. We want people who listen to others. We want people who are not too concerned with showing in any situation, I know the best. I have all the answers. In fact, if you ask me, if anybody thinks he has all the answers to all the questions in the world today, forgive me, he's a bit of a fool. So we want leaders who don't pretend to know all the answers, but who focus on asking the right questions. And by listening to people, co-create the answers. Such people are multipliers, and in the new world, when the mantra is to do more with less, we need leaders who are multipliers and not diminishers. And one big requirement of multipliers is humility. It is the ability to listen very deeply and to get joy in seeing other people succeed, a joy in seeing 1,000 flowers bloom. One core requirement of any organization or any human being to succeed will be innovation. You cannot have innovation unless you experiment and you take risk. You cannot expect people to experiment and take risks if you have created a culture of fear in the organization. In the old days, Mr. Anil Shastri and I went to a school called St. Columba's School, where they believe, spare the rod and spoil the child. That won't work anymore. Fear will not work anymore, because if there is fear, nobody is going to move out of the ordinary. Nobody will take any risk. And therefore we need leaders who know how to manage fear so that people have the courage to take risks. And equally important, people who know how to leverage failure to create success. So failure, far from being something that you should be ashamed about or be worried about, actually becomes the stepping stone to success. In fact, I've just come back from the Silicon Valley. There, if an entrepreneur has not failed many times, people think he is useless. Because, as you know, the best way not to fail is not to try anything. Right? And then what is the use? You've created nothing. So it is very important for tomorrow's leader to have the ability to manage fear. And by the way, fear is the most dominant emotion in all our lives. nobody has to do anything. We live out of fear. The ultimate fear is the fear of death. So given the fact that fear will be there, if on top of that you create a culture of fear, you have killed the organization. So to summarize, do we have leaders, or can we create leaders who know how to manage fear and to leverage failure? Have you heard of J.K. Rowling, by the way? Harry Potter. So you know that she was a single mother and was highly unsuccessful till the success of her novels of Harry Potter. I want your permission to quote a few lines from J.K. Rowling's commencement address at Harvard University a few years ago. Quote, "It is impossible to live without failing at something unless you live so cautiously that you might as well not have lived at all, in which case you fail by default. The knowledge that you will emerge wiser and stronger from setbacks, that you will never truly know yourself or the strength of your relationships until both have been tested by adversity. Such knowledge is a true gift, and even though painfully acquired, it has been worth more to me than any qualification I ever earned." Unquote. This sounds very Buddhistic, just what you would expect of a bearded guy who comes wearing corduroys and a tie on top of that. But actually, I must confess that I picked this phrase in the bastion of capitalism, a place called the Harvard Business School. Right? I picked it up there. And those of you, and of course you must be reading regularly all these business magazines, you will now start encountering this word very, very, very often called mindfulness. Basically what it says is that we are living in an age of over-information, of overstimulation. Even ordinary people like me will receive 400 emails. We are expected to be on Twitter, on Facebook. We are expected to read many newspapers, magazines, then friends say, "My dear Rajiv, here is an interesting article in the Harvard Business Review that you may want to read, and I'd like to have your comments on it by this evening." So poor Rajiv leaves aside all his emails and tweets and all that and starts looking at this, and suddenly he sees another email that says, "My dear Rajiv, here is an excellent article from the Sloan Business Review, and would you please let me have your comments? I need to give a talk tomorrow morning." So what happens is, and by the way, on top of that, you have meetings from morning till night. Mahindra and Mahindra is meetings and meetings. So people are getting stretched. We are losing the ability to go deep into anything. And as you well know, people are at their best when they are in the flow. Have you heard the term "in the flow"? If you're not, you will probably hear it. People are best when they are in the flow, which means that they are here and now. And when you are here and now, you are open to everything that is happening around you. You listen to voices, you pick up information, and in the silence of your mind and in the stillness of your mind, when you're away from emails and tweets and articles, people are at their best. That's when they create. So you have to have leaders who have the ability to be mindful, to be here and now, so that they can create magic in every moment. Let me quote once again. "Look well to this day, for in its short course lie all the realities and verities of existence, the splendor of growth, the glory of action, the sorrow of loss and separation. For yesterday is but a dream, and tomorrow only a vision. But today, well lived, makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. Look well, therefore, to this day. Such is my salutation to the dawn." Kalidas. This is boring stuff, global mindset. You hear about it day in and day out. So I don't want to say much, except that really at a fundamental level, having a global mindset means having an open mind, having the ability to be comfortable with ambiguity, being comfortable dealing with people who are not like you, who think differently, who have different values. How do you be comfortable and go ahead and forge matters in this situation of unfamiliarity, of the VUCA world really. It's about dealing with uncertainty, discomfort zone, moving out of what you know and what you have been used to. How do you do that? That is what a global mindset means, and most importantly, having the ability to keep on learning and reinventing yourself all the time. And then of course there are all kinds of cultural issues and geographic issues. Let me not spend too much time on that. Let me move on. Do you recognize this gentleman on horseback? No, Napoleon Bonaparte actually. Yeah, quite close. We could call him Alexander, but actually he's Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon Bonaparte was among the greatest military commanders of all time. He lived in an age when there was no telegraph and of course there was no telephone. So imagine Napoleon Bonaparte in the battlefield. He is sitting in his main battle tent and he is coordinating and directing the activities of his brigadiers and his generals in different parts of the battlefield. So Napoleon is there and here comes the dispatch rider sent by General Blucher. And this dispatch rider comes, he's panting, caked with dust, he jumps off the horse, salutes Napoleon, comes up and hands him a piece of paper sent by Blucher. This is Blucher telling Napoleon what the situation is and seeking instructions what to do. So Napoleon sits down, thinks for a minute or two, and then he writes out his instructions. Does he send it back with the dispatch rider to Blucher? Oh, no. There is an intermediate step. Napoleon calls the most important aide on the battlefield that Napoleon has. He's a guy called Pierre. Napoleon calls Pierre and gives him that piece of paper. Pierre reads that, and then Napoleon asks him one or two questions. And depending on the answers that Pierre gives, Napoleon decides whether or not to send his instructions to the general. Guess who Pierre was? Pierre was the village idiot. He had an IQ of 60. Napoleon used to check whether Pierre had understood his instructions. And if Pierre had understood his instructions, Napoleon knew there was a decent chance that the general would also understand. And then he would send the instructions. So this is a graphic story to illustrate the KISS principle. Keep it simple and stupid. You see, people like me try to impress you by talking, using a lot of words, showing you how many stories I can tell, how many words in the English language I know. So you may like the sound of the voice, but at the end of it you say, what exactly was the message this guy was giving? Right? Now, great leaders have the ability to communicate very powerful messages, but do it in a way that people understand. What's the point of talking great stuff and people not understanding at the end of it what they're supposed to do? Lal Bahadur Ji, Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan, just 4 words move the nation. Mahatma Gandhi, Karo ya Maro, quit India, 2 words, 3 words, but it could move millions and millions of Indians. And therefore, my humble request to people who are going to walk out with an MBA degree, get PhDs, God knows what, you'll be very successful people, but for God's sake, keep your communication simple so that people can understand you. Otherwise you'll have a real problem, I assure you. Blucher didn't understand what Napoleon wanted him to do and attacked instead of retreat. You can rest assured Napoleon would never have won any battle. Heard of a gentleman called Genghis Khan? Yes. Okay, he's one of my favorites. So Genghis Khan came roaring out of the steppes of Central Asia in the I think it was the 13th century AD. And in his time, and in the time of the generation after him, the Mongols captured more territory than Alexander the Great, Napoleon Bonaparte and Julius Caesar put together. What did Genghis Khan do? Genghis Khan completely changed the rules of warfare. He did not try to do battle better in the same way that the Chinese or the Germans or the Persians fought, who were the big forces at that time. He completely changed how he fought war. So, for example, the Mongol army had no infantry. They had only cavalry. And they used to move at a speed which was 10 times the speed that armies were used to. So you can imagine that if a German prince is expecting the Mongols to make connection with him after 4 days, in the middle of the afternoon, the Mongols, instead of moving 20 miles in a day, would do 100 miles, and they would be on the doorsteps and killing the Germans at the midnight of the first day itself. So it was this speed with which they moved, and it was the surprise element which the Mongols used. Of course, they used other things also, and I don't want to make this a treatise on Genghis Khan. If you're interested, we can talk about it. I've read a lot on him. But the point is that tomorrow's leader, to be successful, has to change the game. It will not do to just play the existing game better. And strategy, if you ask me, is about changing the game. And tomorrow's leader should have the ability to change the game and not just play the existing game better. Last but not least, tomorrow's leader has to know how to create trust. Will his followers trust the leader? And will the leader trust his followers? How do you create trust? You need certainly some technical competence. I don't think people will trust a leader who doesn't have any technical competence, but more important than the technical competence is the authenticity and the credibility of the leader. Does the leader say what he thinks, and does he do what he says? So is his thinking, saying and doing aligned over and over again? Is he credible? Does he walk the talk? It is ultimately walking the talk that creates trust. And the one thing that is lacking most in today's world, the one thing that has created the financial crises that we see again and again, you can see it in the way people behave towards large organizations, towards governments, towards political leaders. It is because they have lost trust. And tomorrow's leader, among other things, and perhaps the most important thing that he has to do, is to create trust in the organization that he works for. Now, I know that you have had a session on labor laws in the morning. I just want to say